Zoom. We're just waiting a few moments to make sure that YouTube picks this up and let people who are just coming on get on so they don't miss anything. Well, hello, I'm Kathryn Jean Lopez from the National Review Institute, and I'm so happy to be here with Sister Magdalene from the Sisters of Life and Sister Mary Casey. Both are in New York City, in different places, actually, all three of us. Sister Magdalene is at the Visitation Mission down by the Brooklyn Bridge, and Sister Mary Casey is more in Midtown at the Holy Respite House that the sisters have where moms and babies live. So we're here to have a Thanksgiving week conversation in the year of coronavirus and all the troubles our world and our city in a particular way, but the country and world. What on earth do we have to be grateful for? Are people feeling Thanksgiving? We certainly need it, and we can't go forward without gratitude. So I thought it would be a wonderful thing to talk with my friends, the Sisters of Life, who are the most joyful people I know. They also, and they're joyful and hopeful, working on the front lines of the intersection between the culture of death and the culture of life. Cardinal O'Connor founded the Sisters of Life something like 27 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes,
right. Yeah, 91. Mm-hmm.
And he said, any woman who is pregnant and needs help, come to the Catholic Church and we will walk with you. And that's exactly what the Sisters of Life do. And so it gives me hope that you exist. And it's about so much more than abortion too. The Sisters of Life have a way of looking at people and really with the eyes of God. You know, every person is unique and loved and was loved into being, and nobody can be abandoned, and Christians can't abandon people because that's not the way of that Jesus set up, right? He talked about the widows and the orphans. And so with that, Sister Magdalene, could you start us off on why on earth would you even celebrate Thanksgiving? What is there to be grateful for? I can give you a litany of things that are going wrong as you can.
Well, I think it's actually written on the human heart in a way that we really don't even know that it's actually good for us to be thankful, and it's transformative for us. I was at Mass today at our celebration of the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, and I was just realizing again, anew that Thanksgiving is what we're made to do, because like Joseph Pieper, you might have heard of him. He wrote a book called The Basis of Leisure is the Basis of Culture, and the highest form of leisure is worship. And that is really ringing so true to me, that when I first learned it, that the highest form of leisure is worship. And so we are best who we are, and we're best relaxed and in leisure when we're in worship, when we're Thanksgiving, when we give Thanksgiving. And even the words from the prayers at Mass, that it is truly right and just, our duty and our salvation, to always and everywhere give you thanks. I mean, that's in the prayer. I think that's so fabulous. So it's written in. So I just think Thanksgiving reveals our actual position before God. It's our actual reality that we're made from nothing. And at one point, I wasn't even a glimmer in my mother's eye. I was absolutely nothing. And then there was a time that I existed, and from the divine action of God, and for that I am thankful. Just that even.
Sister Magdalene, and I'll ask Sister Mary Casey about this in a minute too. All three of us, I point this out to people are kind of shocked that even sisters were deprived of Mass for a period of time during this year. All three of us, I know, really felt that deeply, not having the Mass. So, worship, especially given what you just said, worship is essential.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that something that we need to understand in a new way so that we can live more fully and authentically?
Yes, yeah. And I mean, in a way, the time that we couldn't receive, couldn't attend Mass was a very difficult time. But we have a wonderful volunteer who, he's in his 70s, but he just was so excited. He felt like it was his first communion the day we got Mass back. He was so excited. And I thought he expressed it so well, what we were all feeling, but it's it's almost, the tragedy was difficult, but on the other hand, the new understanding, the new, more, having a bigger awareness has really, I'm just thankful for it, actually, in the end.
I remember saying to people before the pandemic that I could not live without Mass and confession. And while it's for me, it's really hard. It does give you this renewed gratitude. Sister Mary Casey, what are your feelings about gratitude right now in this moment?
Well, I mean, my patron saint is Solanus Casey, which is fitting in a moment such as this, because his whole mantra is that of gratitude. And he even is, he dares to say, thank God ahead of time. And I love that quote is often taken out of context. And it's like the fuller quote is like, for whatever God deems necessary for your life, even how and when and where you die. And so everything leading up to that point. Yeah, I mean, I think gratitude, it's like, we had a man come to our door, a volunteer of ours, and it was during the pandemic, and he was fixing something, and he was mentioning, like, he knew we didn't have Mass. I knew obviously he didn't, and he looked at me with almost tears in his eyes. He said, "Sister, I'm starving." And I thought it was such a profound, first of all, from a man, to hear that from a man about his faith, like, I'm starving for the Eucharist. And like, it was like such this turning point where it was like, I think we, felt the depravity of it and felt the void, but like as Americans and like wanting to be optimistic, it was like, okay, well, we're going to get through this and we're going to get to the other side and kind of looking at all the bright side. But it was really like gave me permission, even so many of the people I live with, like to say like, yeah, we are in a place of like, we're starving and we have a need. And so I will never forget May 1st when Mass did come back. It was like, let this gratitude, let it be real, like do not forget. And that's, that's humanity's problem with God's fidelity, But yeah, I've been thinking a lot about Saint Therese, who says, she always talks about when we thank God, we actually can harness down his heart and he can't help but want to give us more. So I'm like, that's to me, like in this current moment, I'm like, that's the posture. It's kind of like a win all, where it's like, it's giving God what is due to him. Criticism down, he can't help but want to give us more.
Oh, wow. That's a reason to be grateful. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Sister Magdalene, one thing that I worry about, what Sister Mary Casey says, I think is so true. People wanted to be, we can do this. We can come together. But this moment where people are already experiencing shutdowns again, and there's this ominous feeling that, will there even be Christmas? People are being told not to have Thanksgiving. I know so many people who are terrified of seeing their parents or whatever it is. What is the posture to have in that fear and uncertainty? And how can you be grateful when you're terrified about your lost job or your potentially lost job, or keeping things together, and obviously the fear of a illness that is so mysterious in some ways.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I do think we need to turn our gaze really to it's like all these pandemics or this pandemic is only one, is really, really big and really takes all of our kind of energy in a certain sense, but this is not the first pandemic. And, the church and the world has survived it before. And I think it's wonderful to take our eyes off of all of this and really look towards, that thy kingdom will come, that there is a higher place, we're getting stuck in this world a bit, but maybe it's an opportunity to look at thy kingdom come, there's a bigger kingdom. I don't know. It's just, I think it's a little bit of an opportunity to look further.
Sister Mary Casey, how do you do that in the midst, though, of, just all of the fear, and I do worry, you both live in the world like everyone does, but you have the blessing that you have a schedule that keeps you focused on God, right? It's 4 o'clock or whatever, you have to be in the chapel praying. Out in the world, I worry people are here we are on screens, right?
Yeah.
This is our attempt to put good things on the screens, but
Right.
there is, I think there is this widespread addiction to screens and almost going there to get away from the reality, but then at a certain sense, making it worse. For a couple months, I didn't watch any cable news at all. That I think I was telling Sister Mary Casey this. Then one night in August, I decided to watch 3 hours of cable news in the evening. My heart rate was up. I was feeling terrified and stressed and angry and every emotion that is not good, So how do we out in the world have a little more of a contemplative kind of focus where we can see that there is life beyond, this disease, life beyond whoever is president, life beyond whatever everyone in the world seems to be alarmed about right now?
Yeah. Well, I think the words come up a couple times, even just from you, but the last few minutes, but just the notion of the word fear. Like, I think that fear trickles its way into everyone's life, even into the convent. And I think right now, because this has been such a prolonged time of kind of insanity, really, like we're living in a totally unpredictable time. We don't know what tomorrow brings. We're so confused what the last months have been. But something that keeps registering in my mind is like this notion of fear that it's like a toxin that's seeking to find a home in all of our hearts. And I think that, first, I think it actually is like, it's a matter of like looking that straight in the eye. Like, what do we fear? Like, even at the expense of like asking it out loud to yourself in your own room, being in chapel, however you want to do it, but like, what do you fear? Because if we don't have a concept of what we fear, because fear does direct a lot of our decisions, right? It motivates what we do and what we don't do. And so if you don't even know what that fear is, is it death? Do you ultimately fear death? Do you fear just, a loss of income? Do you fear having to live a different way? Do you fear broken relationships? Whatever it is, and it's going to be from small to large, but like actually naming it. And then, ultimately, I don't want to go all theological on us, but like when you think of the fall, like what happened was Adam and Eve feared. They feared God. And so from that very moment, there was this rupture where they no longer trusted that God was good. They no longer trusted he had a plan in store for them. And they feared, who he was to them. And they broke that relationship. And it's like, we have a concept of this, but like to see even how that's creeping in now. And so I think it's like really critical because it's like we can be proactive and we kind of like do things to boost ourselves from becoming depressed, right? Which I think a lot of people are trying to do, like stay on water, which is, it's good, but it's also like, this is like a prized moment in life where it's like, be honest before yourself and before God. Like, what do you fear? Like, and then that answer is like, who is God? Who is God in this? And who do I want him to be? And who do I need to invite him to be? So that's kind of what comes to mind right away.
The biggest question I think people frequently have in this and frequently have whenever something terrible happens is like, if he's God, why wouldn't he stop it? How do you answer that question, Sister Magdalene?
Wow. Well, yeah, I was thinking too about just, in addition, I think fear is such a key phrase here, and just the idea of that perfect love does cast out fear. And I've just met so many families here in New York even that they discovered, oh my gosh, I love my children. I even forgot them, and there's this whole new extraordinary moment where people are discovering family life and beauty and moments that are really profound. And I think one of the other concepts that probably you've read the book by Ann Voskamp, it's called 1,000 Gifts. And she basically challenges everyone to, name 1,000 gifts. And the way she does it is so, I think it's so profound, because, you know, you can sit around and try to be thankful that you have a wonderful mother and the best father and, you know, God made you and everything. But she also challenges us to see the little things, like, thank you for the blue sky, Lord. Thank you for the birds that are singing right now. Thank you for the sun that kind of splashes across my desk in the morning. You know, thank you for the way a little drop of water that someone spilt while pouring my cup this morning looks a little bit like an eyeball and it's staring up at me. And, you know, just these little, total little things that it was like, when I read that book, it kind of made me just awaken a piece of me that I didn't even know was there. You know, this gratitude that is beneath and is so who we are. So in a way, this celebration of Thanksgiving can become a gratitude that overflows into a complete new way of looking at, you know, the terror, the fear, the, oh my gosh, why would God allow this? It can become this, maybe an impetus to go ahead and see those little things. And so in my tiny little life, I started noticing, you know, there's a man across the street he's a doorman, and he always sung a happy little tune. And I was like, oh, now I notice this after 10 years of living here. I notice it and I'm so grateful. You know, and then I started, you know, just noticing the way that the sun rises in between all the buildings as we commute down. And it is glorious. You know, it's glorious to see that on the way down. Instead of thinking about what I'm supposed to do, I'm actually noticing it. And it's so fabulous. And then just the countless little acts of love that I see in each of the sisters, that I see in others that I'm meeting every day. And I benefit from them, others benefit from them, and just really noticing instead of taking for granted. That's something that I really find profound as a way of, you know, because God is seriously in charge and he is allowing all of this. And I even think, you know, he may have allowed all this confusion for a higher purpose. And we don't know. I mean, I can't tell you what, but he's definitely good at being God. And I think that I have to remind myself. Yeah.
Much better than I try. Sister Mary Casey, I mean, you were locked in a building basically with the sisters and with moms and babies for the end of March until sometime in May.
I'm trying to forget the dates.
Yeah, I don't blame you. For a very, very long time. I mean, how do you do that, and how do you trust God in that when you? I imagine at certain moments we're like, come on, like this has to stop.
You're correct. I think to some degree, what's helpful is knowing that like the world at large is kind of in a similar situation. The one advantage that I will say is that, you know, we live in a house. I think we've had some moms come and go, you know, they moved out. We've had another one move in since. But the one major advantage, especially, I don't remember if they did this cheer everywhere throughout the country, but the 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock cheer for medical workers. And we didn't know originally what that meant. And so I thought, because we don't watch the news, so I didn't know why they were cheering. And of course we jumped in. I thought that it was like just this cheer of like, we're alive, you know, we're like in our apartments and we're alive. And so about a week later, we found out it was cheering for something far more noble. But it was a really profound moment for me because our convent is located encircled by huge apartment buildings. You know, each of these apartments have, you know, 1 or 2 tenants in each of these little, you know, studio apartments. And so that kind of kept stabilizing me, where it was like that moment where you have to, the at least list that we make, it was like, at least I'm not alone, you know, and then I look around, I'm like, we're all still here, but at least I'm not alone. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but there's one sister who always says, she goes, when you're poor, you're poor. And that was kind of like an umbrella experience, living in the convent, was where I was like, none of us are leaving. We're all in this together. And so it was like, you can kind of hide, you know, you can kind of manipulate and control different things to a certain point. But I think when we all cruised right past the threshold, it was like this beautiful moment of like, I'm going to love you in the messiness. I'm going to love you in the beauty. I'm going to love you when you want to be unlovable, you know? So, and then you mix secular pregnant women in the mix and, you know, a couple cute babies. So it was crazy, but it's like, it was that moment where it's like, all we have right now is love and all we have is each other, you know?
That really is one of the mercies of this time. I mean, obviously there's been such suffering and continues to be suffering and death and you know, the pandemic of loneliness and depression and all of these things, the suicide rates, but everyone, it's been this universal encounter with poverty. You know, yeah, maybe you got to leave your luxurious apartment and go to your house in Florida or whatever, but you still could get this disease, right? Nobody could actually completely hide, like nobody can hide from death, right? And so it has been that, hasn't it, Sister Mary Casey?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, the inevitable, you know, and I think that that's even a huge thing of like, what can we control and what is just a part of life, you know, and the unknown, the mystery of God. And I think so many people, luckily, you know, at least people I've talked to and my own family, it's like the struggle, and it's like the list, I think, of suffering is long, right? You know, and the list of darkness and depression and suicide, like these are real things that are like need to be taken seriously and looked at. And yet, you know, to be grateful for moments where it's like people have at least had glimmers of hope and saying like, I've got in the people around me and the people I have even at a little bit of a distance, it's like, I do have love, and I do have, you know, ultimately that is what we need. Yeah.
I just want to point out to people who are watching that you can send questions in the Q&A box on Zoom, and you can also email if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. Well, you could put comments in the boxes or email amanda@nrinstitute.org, and she'll get me the questions. Sister Magdalene, so in what you describe as your tiny little life, you have been quite busy during this pandemic, delivering food to families. I couldn't get you on the phone the other day because you were delivering 50 or more turkeys to families in the New York area. Can you talk a little bit about your life in the pandemic and also where you've seen gratitude in people who are struggling, some of these families who you serve?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we saw a lot of amazing things that I was not expecting. So we don't normally have any sort of food distribution as part of our work. We try to keep extra things on hand if somebody's really in need, but it's just not, we're not running a pantry in any way. But we learned, you know, we started seeing that during the pandemic, there was less opportunity for certain people to get food, especially in the beginning. And just a few thoughts came up and we called around, and thank God Goya is an amazing company that decided to donate enormous amounts, like a truckload of food every month. And we've been able to distribute that to around 500 families or so a month. And just recently, there's a few companies that got together and gave us way too many turkeys. And thank God we got drivers, a whole bunch of drivers. I think at one point we had 20 drivers, each taking somewhere around 5 turkeys to different women. And it was great because basically we were afraid of having them all defrost, but we did have one freezer, so that was great. But in the end, and another coworker purchased pies for everyone to go with their Thanksgiving dinner. So it's been kind of, I don't know, just so beautiful. And so we have an enormous number of people we call coworkers. They're volunteers who really want to put their service at the service of human life. And
you have a crazy number of coworkers all around.
We do, yeah. I mean, I think the signed up number is in the 20,000 range, but the day-to-day in New York, every day we're calling them is more like 2,000, yeah.
Wow.
But all over the country, there's many people. There's people in every state, actually, yeah.
In Canada as well.
In Canada, yes. We have a whole nother mission that serves Canada, absolutely. To be honest, it's in Africa and India. We've been branching out because of the WhatsApp. So it's more global all of a sudden, but it wasn't a planned thing. It just, we backed right into that. So, but yeah, the beauty of people's desire to serve in this time, I think has also been out of control for me, because I really thought fear was going to maybe dictate, but just as all this happened, there's been more like, how can I help? How can I get involved? And it's really been overwhelmingly beautiful. I can't even tell you. It's just amazing. Yeah. And then we did have, basically there's this COVID baby boom that's happening at this time. So there was just a few pregnancies that occurred. And so now we're able to help them choose life. And so we're a bit busy with that. But it's doing, I think a lot of women, I think this has pared down. Many women will say that we're working with, they have a reason to be concerned about their future, and they have a big temptation towards abortion. But because so many people have died in the world and in their families, they're like, I don't want to bring more death. I don't want to bring more death. And so that's been beautiful. Of course, not everyone has that opinion, but sometimes that has been voiced, and it really is beautiful. So I think this whole pandemic has reawoken some core values in a lot of us.
One of the darknesses upon darknesses was that the abortion clinics were open. I mean, people therapy.
That's why we stayed open.
Right. But the abortion was a real threat during this time, that you were still hearing from women. And
yes, yeah. No, and of course many women are tempted towards abortion in a time like this for the very fact that there aren't a lot of jobs, and there aren't that's my big, maybe if any of your viewers would like to maybe take that torch, because if there were a way to hire women, now that we know that working from home is a great idea, wouldn't that be great for all single moms to work from home? That's been my biggest dream, to have a corporation that really caters to that, but hopefully a win-win thing, that both sides win, that there would be a really good way to hire the women to work from home, to be able to be present to their children.
Mm-hmm. Is that the biggest, I mean, there's so many biggest challenges, but is that the biggest challenge, not being able to see how you could do a job and raise a child at the same time?
Yeah, I would say that's probably really up there. Yeah, as the biggest. Mm-hmm.
What do you say to women who are in this vulnerable position, who, first of all, how did they find you in the first place? And then what is it that they need to hear?
Sure. Well, what they mostly find us through priests are a big one. The biggest number right now, though, are women we've served in the past. They're telling their friends, "Oh, you're pregnant. We know someone." That's been the biggest number. But then priests and the sidewalk counselors, and many, even, I mean, weird enough, even a counselor who might be on the other side will refer now to us, just because we've been here a while and people are catching on that we tend to not drop anyone. I mean, once in a while, but we mostly don't. And so it's been really beautiful, the referrals, but also, if a woman calls and she's not sure what she's going to do, I mean, in the beginning, we want to walk her in and hopefully have a in-face meeting, because those are always just easier. And we were doing that on benches outside for a while, but lately we're just doing the 6 feet thing. But it's been, I think what we've been able to say is, if everything were different, if you had a job, if you had that income and you had an apartment and, everything was settled for your baby, what would you do then? And really every time they always say, oh, of course I would have my baby, if everything were settled. And so we're like, well, let's just make that happen, and so that's kind of our job, is to do that. We also really explore what her dreams are and what her hopes are, because whatever that dream was, she wants to be a doctor, she wants to be a lawyer, she wants to, I don't know, invent the cure to cancer. we want to help her do that. And so we are going to make that happen. You know, we're going to get her one step closer. And that's been really exciting. There's a lot of coworkers who are eager to be behind that project. Yeah.
Sister Mary Casey, if somebody is watching this and you're just sort of curious and don't necessarily have the same faith background and outlook that you have, and maybe if somebody's even does have the same faith, but just isn't feeling it, isn't thinking this is nice pious talk from some sisters, but what might you offer to them that might be an invitation to the reality that we can't really go forward without gratitude?
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. And I think everyone, even in the psychological world, anyone who has actually studied this, it's like, and I think Sister mentioned it earlier, but like the psychological effects, it's almost like do a trial yourself. You know, if you want to, if you don't believe it, it's like, this is so much of life anyhow, but like try making acts of gratitude and thanksgiving. And so as I was saying, I do have the luxury of living with the moms. And so this morning I was telling them kind of what was going on today. And I said, what do you want me to tell them? Like your input is going to be far more valuable. And they were thrilled. I think they wanted to be on it with me.
Open the door.
There was enough screen room. But one of them who really has come from nothing, and has really one of the hardest hands that I have seen dealt to someone. She went on this list this morning. We were just in the kitchen. She was chopping something, and she went on this list of telling people what they should be thankful for. Oh. And I didn't know where it was going to start. I didn't know where it was going to end. And she's going on, she's chopping. Tell them to be thankful for running water. Tell them to be thankful that they have a bed. Tell them to be thankful that they have a roof. Tell them to be thankful even if they don't have a job that they can get a job. And and then she's going on and on. I'm like trying to remember everything she said. At one point, she looked up at me and she said, "Sister," she said, "tell them to be thankful that when everyone else leaves them and everything seems to fail, they will still have Jesus." And granted, that's not going to speak to someone who maybe doesn't have, but like to so many people who find themselves in the middle of like wanting to have faith, but not knowing what that looks like. I was like, what a word of inspiration, like when everything seems to fail, when all actually seems lost, like I told them to say thank you, and I was like, I think she nailed it. Cause I think that's the actual, that's the practice. That's the posture of actually saying thank you, not just conceptualizing it. But saying, even yesterday, she said, she looked at me, we were deep in conversation. All of a sudden she looked at me and she goes, "We have electricity." She goes, "Someone else is paying for me to have lights." Oh. And it was like just a beautiful moment where I was like, you're right. Like someone's paying for me to have lights, like have I thanked God? But yeah, it was beautiful. It happened just, an hour ago. She's like, tell them to say thank you.
So cool.
Yeah. So beautiful. I do find myself walking around Manhattan. We were talking about this yesterday, Sister Mary Casey. It's like so dark. There's so many people. Last night I was just looking at all the people who were sleeping out. It was frigid last night. Like to be in America and have to have people sleeping on concrete in boxes is just unconscionable. But you're just like there, but by the grace of God go I, thanks be to God I have a roof over my head and all of these things that we do take for granted.
Yeah.
I think the gospel this morning, wasn't it about Jesus being with us until the end? And I just remember Cardinal Dolan saying, I happened to be at the cathedral and he said, we take that for granted, and it's sad to say, but sometimes it takes, the crisis to get us to a point where, and really facing death, where we realize, oh gosh, I guess I really do believe this, and you really have to struggle with that because even for sisters, there are these moments where like Sister Mary Casey, you're just talking about that woman who had such a hard hand, and you have to look and think like, God, can't you give her a little bit of a break here?
Yeah.
But he makes something beautiful out of it.
He does.
And what a witness to other people too.
Yeah. I think it's beautiful too because And they said I can share this. I think they wanted me. That one of those moms was having a hard day a few days before, which is pretty much all of our case. It doesn't matter if we're one of the moms or one of the sisters, we're all having a hard day every 3 days or so, you know? And one of the other's mom, who actually, this woman, she came from everything. She had everything. And lavished us with stories about, you know, the yachts and, you know, the life that she had before she had the baby. And, you know, she even bought like Gucci clothes for the baby, you know, like just like very outlandish. And then moves into a convent. Here we are giving her used clothing, and she doesn't have a job. She doesn't have so many things. She doesn't have the connection she had before. And one of those moms was just sharing out loud, you know, that she was having a hard time. And this mom took her baby and she starts spinning around. She goes, I used to have it all. I had it all. And she made a litany of what she had. And in the world's eyes, she did have it all. And she holds her baby out. She goes, now I have everything. And she goes, none of that matters anymore. And it was like these moments where it's like, you don't even think you can write this, because it's like you want them to say it, but you can't manufacture it. And she looked at this mom. She's holding out her baby. This is everything. This is your world. Like all this stuff, it doesn't matter. And I think, you know, this obviously happens in the hearts, thankfully, oftentimes of our women, but hopefully it's happening in the hearts of Americans and just human beings, where it's like, you know, what do we really need to have? And what do we already possess? What's already at our fingertips? What do we have access to? And what, you know, if there's anything we've learned, it's like how much we don't need, and then what we actually do need.
Sister Magdalene, you know, Christians tend to have like a crucifix in their living room or wherever they have it. And someone said to me the other day that her husband had just died, and she was talking about the suffering at the end as a crucifixion. And you're reminded at times of great suffering and loss that that's the life Christ lived. And so there are these moments of the false security when things are going right, and there are blessings in that, and you know, those are great gifts, but we're never promised that that's what all of life is going to look like. And you know, and Catholics talk about redemptive suffering, right? But it sounds sort of pious. And I even remember a good friend of mine, when she was dying, saying to a priest, all my life people have talked about offering it up. How do I do that? You know? So that's a long about way of asking, I mean, what is the Christian response right now to the fact that there is this suffering, and there is this common suffering, and this common vulnerability, and that we're not supposed to run away from it, but we can actually do great work with it by entering into it, right? But how do you do that? And
wow.
Well, pious theological nonsense.
Thank God my mom always had us offer everything up. That was always helpful. But I would never even notice I had knees at all until the day my knees started hurting. And I'm like, oh, I don't like having a knee that hurts. And all of a sudden I have a knee, you know, but to be thankful for the fact that I can walk, you know. But I think something that's even more powerful, what you said about the cross, I think what is really the power of, you know, that was the redemption. So when Christ was powerless, actually nailed to a cross, couldn't move, even though through his life he had made miracles. This is something Cardinal O'Connor, our founder, would always say, that he would make miracles, he would heal people, cure the sick, raise the dead. But then when he couldn't move, when he was pinned to a cross, when there was nothing he could actually do to help others, that's when he saved the whole world. And he decided to do that on purpose, you know, that without any actions on his part, he saved the entire world through redemptive suffering. That is incredible. And so Cardinal O'Connor would often visit priests in the hospital or other people in the hospital and remind them, you are more powerful here than you have ever been in your whole life. And in that way, to unite our sufferings to that suffering, which I don't think we can even fathom. You know, him, our Lord, being such a perfect person, having such a sensitive nature. We don't have those kinds of sensitivities. The pain we feel isn't like his pain, and his sorrow over sin isn't like our sorrow over sin. It was so much greater. And so just to unite our sufferings with his and knowing that God can make all things powerful, especially that, I also was thinking a bit about something, maybe it's a tangent, but the way in which at one point in the beginning of our mission, I was very concerned about the sisters having vicarious traumatization with all the, if a woman doesn't choose life and, the sorrows that are common. And I saw so deeply that I really wanted, I really was curious what to do. And so I ended up being in touch with a captain in the Navy who this was her work, to study basically PTSD. And as she was sharing all of these studies with me, and there were many, because the military has a great vested interest in this, it came out, this is why I bring it up today, it came out that it was forgiveness and gratitude that definitely would waylay or push aside or even heal PTSD. And it's fascinating to me. So it's basically if let's say a soldier is commanded with his platoon to go down a certain path, and the commander has commanded him to go there, and his whole platoon is blown up, but he is the only survivor. He can either live in resentment and anger, or he can choose to forgive and be thankful for his life. And those who choose to forgive the commander for making that call, or choose to be thankful that they lived, they have like huge percentage chance of being free and being basically mentally stable their whole lives. And I just see that as being a great word for gratitude. It's God made this part of us to be grateful for our own sakes and for, and for others, to increase the joy in the world probably, and to be able to offer it up, I suppose.
Sister Mary Casey, Sister Magdalene mentioned Cardinal O'Connor, and I often think of that quote that you have on your medals, I believe, that nothing will be casual or small after the incarnation. And what does that mean in terms of this moment and going forward and gratitude? Because there's a way, if you think about nothing can be casual or small, that could be a huge weight now, right? Because of all the pressing issues. But how does that become a thing of joy and gratitude?
Yeah, I think it's critical. And to be honest, it's one of those things that since I've been in the convent, I'm only just now like scratching the surface, and it's only just now like taking root in my own life, because the truth is like when you live in the world, it's like, what do you mean nothing is small? Like it's not really a worldly way of thinking, but I do think it's a Christian. It is a Christian way of thinking, but it hasn't been a long time that I would have identified necessarily with that. I think I always liked the idea, but I think it's critical in times like this, because we have been stripped so bare that for the sake of being Christians, for the sake of being human, and for the sake of relationships, like to say like everything matters. All of our thoughts matters, our interactions matter. The way that we spend our time, it matters, and the way that we choose to love, the way that we choose to forgive, like all of these things matter. And I think because life has slowed down and kind of toppled over in a certain sense, the invitation is to jump into that. The temptation is to flee from it, because it's super uncomfortable when we have to, right? It's like people are just binge everything right now. But like if there's even one person who's willing to like step back and silence their life and say like, wow, all of the variables in my life matter. All my small acts and decisions and thoughts and moments of prayer and moments of gratitude and moments of sacrifice, they matter. Yeah. And then the world is like it will yell the exact opposite, and so just to realize that it screams the opposite, like nothing matters, nothing matters, nothing matters,
Yeah.
Sister Magdalene, if everything matters, how do you get to the point where you can put all the noise aside and really focus on that sunset or what, or the singing doorman. There's so many temptations to not just stop and rest in the gratitude of some gift of God.
Well, you know, I'm kind of a broken record around all the sisters here, but just this idea of resting in who we are meant to be. And I mean, I spend a lot of time with women who will be mothers, and that like, for instance, just that, you know, just the motherhood of a person, that they are drawn to nurture others, and they receive, as Sister Mary Casey was so beautifully was able to share that story, that she could see the total, like, absolute good, you know, just like bare, beautiful good in her child that she was describing, and how it brings us back to the essence of things, the essence of what God created. And I feel, I mean, you know, we can talk about the ills of society forever, but it seems as though we've lost some of those actual truths that, you know, women were created in essence to be mothers. They can be spiritual mothers. They can also be actual mothers. And that is an incredibly big grace and a gift to be guarded and a gift to be shared. And then, of course, fathers, you know, men are supposed to be fathers, spiritual or actual, and it will change the world. I think we've forgotten some of these things, and we feel like we can't say those words, but those are good words, you know, fatherhood, motherhood, it makes up who we are called to be. You know, we often, as sisters, or even women, you know, we want to be a daughter and then a wife and then a mother. You know, these things are goods that we can really hold on to. And those are the essence, to get us back to the essence. We don't have to be CEOs. We don't have to be flying in planes. You know, there might be germs on planes, apparently. So we can do all this. We can be who we were meant to be. We can cook dinner. We can, you know, sew clothes. I think little things have really raised in my mind as being more essential than they used to be. Yeah. Yeah.
We have about 10 minutes, and Sister Mary Casey, can you talk just in super practical terms? You know, we're nearing the end of this tumultuous year, and I think there are a lot of people who are, you see this a lot on social media, so you don't see it, but you hear it from people. Oh, thank God this year is almost over. I can't wait till next year, which is totally not the lesson to take from 2020, because we're still going to have the same challenges and probably more once January and a new year and New Year's roll around. And so how do we get to the place of that mother who realizes the child is everything? How do we really accept the invitation of appreciating what Sister Magdalene was saying? You know, sometimes it's okay that you haven't traveled 300 times this year like you did last year. There may be a blessing in that, you know, starting to appreciate the simple gifts and joys.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because I think we live in a culture that's like so driven by adventure and, like, you know, Instagram and like charting your life and like publicizing it, and, you know, and it's not all inherently bad, but by virtue of the pandemic, it's like, you know, you can only take so many pictures now. But I even think of just that idea of like, I can't wait for 2020 to be over, and I'd be lying to say that I haven't said it out loud several times, and it points to this desire of like, I'm done with this, right? I don't want this anymore, and there's some of it that's actually okay, right? There's some certain things like, I don't want to wear a mask anymore in my life because I want people to see my face, because I know that my face can bring Jesus to them. And I know that they need a smile more than they need 6 feet, you know? And so
right.
there are certain things that I'm like, I'm done with. And for whatever reason, like the turning of a year, we seem to like attach this, like, you know, it's like it's new hope. And yeah, on the flip side, like I would say it points to like, we long for something more, right? We desire something more than our current circumstances. And this was even the case before the pandemic, you know, if we're really being honest, like we have longings and we have desires in our heart. And so I would say very practically, like, come to terms, what do you long for in your life, you know, and as Christians, I think if this is like a pivotal point in life, like, because it turns out 100% mortality, right? Like we're all going to die. And so we have to ask the questions of like, do I long for a world, you know, the world that Jesus promised? Do I long for heaven? Do I long to like order my life in such a way that by the end of my life, I can say, well, I did the best that I could, you know? And I think because we're all staring mortality in the face a little bit differently than before, like, I think that these are actually really good things to question and to answer, you know, for ourselves and even to other people. But like the desire for it to be over is more a matter of like, I want something more. I want life, you know? And so it's like, well, then how can I live this life? How do I want to live this life? And even concrete, like, you know, put words to it. What do I want my life to look like? And ultimately it's like to be able to answer the question, like, do I really want the life that is ahead, you know? And I think like deep down, of course, we say yes, but I think we wrestle with it because, you know, of fear and unknown and attachments and sin, you know, but to ask those questions, I think is like, it's like prime time.
You were talking about fear before, you know, if the fear is, and it certainly is for me, you know, oh my gosh, I'm not sure I'm ready. You know, if I were to die today, you know, there are a million things I would have done differently. And if people are at that point which I imagine a lot of people are, how do you change? How do you really reject sin and all those things that keep you away from God?
Yeah. So ironically, I happened to be on the phone with someone last night and their family member is dying of cancer. And so it was kind of the last thoughts I had last night and trying to figure out how to get last rites to them and all the stuff. And so I woke up still thinking about it. And this morning, it's so funny because I'm always the one that I'm like, we shouldn't be scared of death. You know, it's kind of like my mantra. And yet for whatever reason, I woke up this morning and there was like something unsettled in my own heart, thinking about this person, about my own mortality. And, you know, I do think that it's okay to have a little bit of fear in it, but I think like God gives us freedom and free will and an ability to choose. And so, I mean, not to like beat a dead horse, but like we're accountable for our decisions. So like to actually make decisions to reconcile our life, like we cannot control our past. And so it's a lesson in mercy. Like, well, where's God's mercy? Did he make me do it or did he not? Did he forgive me or did he not? And like, we can usually answer those pretty quickly. You know, we didn't forgive ourselves, but like, that's our past. And so like someone can walk us through that, but then it's like, you know, what does it even mean to be ready? You know, did I love well? Did I give of my life? I mean, this is the Beatitudes. It's like, you know, even the gospel this weekend, like, did you serve the people that were before you? You know, like the people that came to your door, the people that called, the people that needed something, the people in your family, the people that drive you crazy, you know, like, and, you know, like, like there's so much of this that I think we can actually answer ourselves. And then if it's not doing it, then it's like, okay, I'm sorry, Jesus. Like a sincere apology, it works. Like he takes us at face value. Like, I'm really sorry. And then ask for the grace, go to confession, do what you need to do to begin again. And this is the beauty of being Catholic. You know, it's like every day, thank God, after 24 hours, it's like, start again, start again, start again.
Or the next hour, you know.
Yeah.
I take a mercy in the changing of every hour, sometimes half hour. I'm like, oh wait, okay, I'll try again here. God, you know.
Begin again.
Sister Magdalene, how can you practically help us move forward in gratitude?
Move forward. Wow. Well, I was thinking of when you were talking, I was just thinking of a priest who has this miracle minute. So I think he'll be in these, you know, that difficult moment, and let's say somebody's losing their temper, and he'll just say, you know, I just think we should take a miracle minute, and he'll just be silent for a minute with the person who might be on, you know, a little hotter on the collar, and it's so cool.
Does it work?
I just think of it works. It works every time for him. He always has a great story to tell. But I just find that
he's never gotten like clobbered for doing that.
No, so far he's looking good. But I was at the same time just really, just the ideas of being in the state of grace, which, really getting ready to meet our maker, I find is something we want to do all the time, but maybe there's a more awareness now. And maybe this is such a, just like Sister said, to take advantage of the sacraments of confession, especially before any closures might occur. If they do, we want to really take advantage of those sacraments, because that gets us back. And I know that I even feel like I learn more. I mean, I'm supposed to know these things as being a sister, but I feel like I only learned it last week sometimes, like, oh my gosh, I have authority over my spiritual life. I have complete authority, and I'm able to say, this needs to get out and this needs to get in. And to have that power and know it, because I think a whole, myself included, all of us think, well, I just have to deal with what comes and what goes, just life is just crazy and I just have to accept it. Well, no, I have the authority, and I can cast things out of my little world, and I can receive grace upon grace upon grace. Like people say, if the way grace is flowing down, you just need to kind of open your mouth, receive. And some people are going to be like, gross, but no, we got to receive it. All the grace that's coming. So anyway.
And one of the mercies of this year being, we do need supernatural help. It's true. And for anybody who maybe hasn't gone to confession ever or recently, why is it so important, just on a human level?
On a human, well, I mean, it's like complete freedom. It's like the best kept secret. It's free counseling. I mean, it unburdens you actually for eternity, which I think, that takes a bit of faith maybe, but really the truth I have seen, in my own life, like carrying around boulders and feeling so burdened, and then bang, after confession, completely free. We always have our own weaknesses, but confession takes away the huge damage, a huge amount that I'm carrying, and then you have a path to reorder your life afterwards. Yeah, I find it amazing.
One thing I keep saying to people, if you have that appreciation, thank a priest who is providing the sacrament. Yeah. I did have the experience yesterday where it was a long confession line. People were taking advantage of that free counseling. And I just knew this was the day I needed to go to confession. God wanted me to go to confession. And the priest, God bless him, came back to the confessionable after Mass. So for anybody who was still in line, and it's like it's worse than if you didn't take a shower, you need to go to confession and get that grace again. And it totally is the best kept secret. And we should stop keeping it a secret.
Yes.
Sister Mary Casey, do you have any last words for us as we go into Thanksgiving and Advent and Christmas and a new year and beginning again right at the 2:00 hour?
Yeah, gosh. Oh, I think this re-echoes a lot of people who have kind of, I think, coined this term, but I feel like God has spoken to me, but he just constantly telling me, especially in times like this, just be kind. Be kind to one another. And I know it can sound a little hallmarky, but it's a Christian principle, to be kind and to be patient, and I think that, I'm desperate for people to be patient with me right now. And I can feel their desperation, and I had a friend tell me once, he gave me a great definition of patience. And he said, patience is a willingness to suffer long-term with someone. And I'm like, if that doesn't sum up our life right now, where it's we don't know the end of any of this, and there's a longevity that we're being asked and invited to, but suffer along and with them and to be patient. And then make that list of gratitude and say thank you as much as you can, because the more you thank him, the more he's going to give you. He cannot help it.
Yeah, and the more we thank too people who do help us in our lives, the priest who celebrates Mass when you had months when you couldn't go to Mass, and that thing about kindness is so key, I think. One of the sisters you live with, Sister Mary Casey, I had a severe migraine issue a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that the pandemic has helped, I think, a lot of us realize is how transactional we could be. I spent a lot of time with the sister over the years, and I had no idea that she was suffering from migraines as much as she did. And so in being able to appreciate our common humanity and vulnerabilities, I think we're all brought closer, and we have a newfound appreciation, I hope. And I think this is how gratitude grows, for we have no idea what another person is suffering, and everyone is suffering. And so to be able to really draw joy out of people in our common humanity, I think is key for moving forward and being grateful, for sure. And Sister Magdalene, do you have any last words for us?
I don't know. I think I mean, I'm all about, just resting in the gratitude that, because that is our actual stance, that we are nothing before God, and that we want to be grateful for every single thing, even existence. Really
freedom in that too, realizing, I mean, what you were describing before about appreciating all these little things. I mean, I find just this morning, there was a beautiful, after I left the cathedral, or right before I went into the cathedral, there's this beautiful kind of orangey, pinkish sky. And I just think, thanks be to God that it's so much bigger than us, that God is God, and we don't have to figure everything out. A friend of mine said the other day that God does not provide answers, he provides saints. And I think, all of what this conversation is I think meant to be, how do we be who exactly God created us to be, to be saints? That's not an exotic thing. I mean, I think we're reminded when like Father McGivney is beatified, he's a fairly recent person in the world. This is not second century stuff. And so I think so we can all move forward together in gratitude with this appreciation that we're all here as creations of a creator who loves us and has plans. And so thank you, Sister Magdalene and Sister Mary Casey.
You're welcome. Good to be with you.
Thank you for this wonderful, hopeful conversation. And can one last question. So how do people help the Sisters of Life? Oh,
well, there's always signing up for being a coworker, which is our volunteer program. And there's always, we have a little a way to serve the women indirectly, but directly with our Amazon registry. So that's just something. And I suppose, if people are of the mind to financially donate, there's roofs and boilers, they keep going.
Very particularly, Sister Magdalene is looking for a roof and a boiler at St. Andrews.
And Sacred Heart. We all have the same problems.
Lots of roofs and boilers that need to be done. Sistersoflife.org is the website, right?
Yes, sistersoflife.org.
And I do have to say, Imprint is it Imprint? Is that the name of the magazine?
Yes.
It's so beautifully done and very uplifting. So I know on the website there's a way to get on that list, because that's a list everybody wants to be on. Believe me, I find that every time it arrives quarterly.
Yeah, it's a free magazine, and people really do love it. And I would say, sign your whole family up. Especially, it's a great gift for Christmas. Yeah,
it is beautifully put together.
And it's free.
It's free.
Yeah, it's free.
And, they really mean it. And it's not, and the benefit is too that you get the prayers of the sisters too when you become a part of their lives in even that small way. Well, thank you again, both of you, and thank you for the gift of the Sisters of Life and your joy, and we have to thank God for that. And thank you for everyone who has made the time to watch this. We really appreciate you, and I'm always grateful. Actually, today would be Bill Buckley's birthday, and he was the founder of National Review, and so I'm just particularly grateful today to be able to be at the National Review Institute and to do things like this. This isn't the first event event that I've done with the Sisters of Life. It's not the first event I've done with Sister Magdalene, and I'm grateful for that. So happy Thanksgiving.